No, guys, Ted was on Dancing with the Stars.
Now you drop this?
He's a natural.
Now you drop this?
Wait, really?
And he dated Christy Brinkley.
No.
Actually?
Who's the other one?
Stop it.
What's her name?
Just stop. This is being recorded.
I'm like, wait a minute.
This is they have like
Google it
blooper
anyway.
they have blooper
Yeah,
reel
just
gold
Google
now.
Kirstie Alley, right?
What's going on there,
Is
Ted?
that real?
Ted, after this, Google Ted Valley's Dancing with the Stars.
Welcome to the second part of this episode of Reynolds Direction. Now I am joined by the second guest from TOMO Mortgage. Ted, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Ted, I would love to give you the chance to introduce yourself and how you found yourself working at TOMO Mortgage.
Sure. Again, Ted Volanetz. I'm a senior loan advisor on the loan advisor team at TOMO. I was kind of born into mortgage. I don't think any kid grows up thinking they're going to be a loan advisor or involved in mortgage, but my dad was one of the first mortgage brokers in New York City in the 80s. So the running joke in my family has always been they invested quite some time into me. And now that I'm a little bit older than a mortgage, the question was, did that investment pay off? And I certainly hope that TOMO thinks so.
Did the interest rate work out?
Yeah.
Was the monthly payment worth it in the end? Well, wow, that's very interesting. So one of the first mortgage brokers in New York City in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Before it was a licensed activity, before any of that really started. And I come from that, I guess, old school background of giving every single buyer or person that you work with personalized attention, especially since they're doing something that they've never done before. It's the biggest decision people make in their life, and they maybe go through the mortgage process once or twice. And what drew me to TOMO was that we have that same care for people while having the funds and the ability to build technology that makes it way easier and way faster than it's ever been before.
Absolutely. Definitely in kind of the modern landscape of things, there's definitely a ton of websites, businesses, other sorts of different brands and companies involved in the mortgage space. And it feels like with the modern day consumer, as they start the home buying process and look around different websites, it almost kind of seems like a lot of consumers are inundated with websites, mortgage programs, and all these different people trying to attract their attention. So with TOMO being one kind of really sort of the centerfold of a lot of the technology and the social media aspect to the mortgage process in this day and age, what is it from your perspective as a mortgage officer that makes TOMO stand out from the rest of the crowd?
Well, we do things very, very differently. First, we're incredibly transparent. You don't have to talk to me to know what your rate's going to be. You could just go on our website, hellotomo.com/rates, and plug in your exact scenario, what you're buying, where you're buying it, what down payment you plan on making, and you'll see the rates update in real time, and they're incredibly competitive. We don't charge any junk lender fees for processing or underwriting because we're looking to do everything that we can to make homeownership more affordable.
Absolutely. I definitely think the transparency part is a very big deal because it seems like with so many different documents that a consumer gets when they're filling out to apply for a loan and to get a pre-approval, it seems like there's always this breakdown of numbers and schedules and dates that to the naked eye can be kind of hard and complex to read. But it's nice that TOMO has that sort of a calculator right there on the website so the consumer knows exactly how to calculate their math in terms of their payment and what they're getting into with one of the biggest purchases of their life.
And we'll walk them through it. We'll show them what their closing costs are. We're super transparent about absolutely everything. I believe that buyers are able to make better decisions when they know more. And if I help educate a buyer, they'll be more confident in the decisions that they make.
Absolutely. Now, I want to ask a very complex question that I'm very confident that you would be able to answer in a concise way.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. But I feel like as a lot of consumers navigate this market, with how much interest rates have fluctuated recently, there are all these questions as to how interest rates are set, how that affects the housing market, and how that kind of affects everything on your end from writing up the loan. So from your perspective, as we've kind of navigated a lot of these changes in the market over the past couple of months, what have you seen change overall in the lending process, and sort of a lot of the worries that consumers have or some of the questions they have as they discuss the financing process with you?
So the questions or the worries that people have today are largely driven by headlines, right? The changes that the government made were announced in January, but they don't really change a buyer's ability to get financing. If anything, it helps more buyers get into a chance to buy a home. So the way I look at it, at least, is, we never let facts get in the way of a good headline, and the headlines aren't fully accurate as far as explaining what's going on in the market. If you have a great credit score and a solid down payment, you're still getting a great rate. It's just a little less great than it was before. And if you have challenging credit or a lower down payment, your payment is still worse than the better credit situation. It's just less worse. So more buyers can come into the market, which is essentially a good thing, because the goal, again, is to help more people buy homes.
Absolutely.
Was that concise enough? You want to take it again?
Yeah, I think that was perfect. That was actually really perfect. And definitely, I think that's been one of the biggest headlines that I'm sure you've gotten a lot of questions of, is this announced change from, I believe, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, where there was a lot of media pushback in terms of this supposed new fee for good credit borrowers that was allegedly announced to subsidize a lot of the costs for lower credit borrowers. Is that fact or fiction?
So the truth behind it is, yes, you can look at it as a subsidy, but there are ways around it also. The people most impacted, if you actually look at the grid, and I could send this to you afterwards, are buyers that have a credit score between 720 and 760 and are putting around a 20% down payment. So their rate was impacted the most. And essentially, it's only either an eighth or 0.125 or 0.25 or 0.25% higher. But there's ways around it, and we help buyers in those situations too.
Well, that's definitely very good to know. And definitely, I think one of the biggest headlines that sounds like has a couple of different solutions in terms of addressing, even with that being in place.
Right, it changed, but it's okay. You have to play the ball where it lies, and this was probably the biggest change that's happened in mortgage pricing since the financial crisis. But if you're real about buying a home today, that small of a change shouldn't stop you from doing it.
Now, I definitely want to get into a lot of the tools that TOMO has from the financing process overall that makes it to where TOMO is really going at it with trying to get the consumer the best deal and make the process as easy as possible. One of those things being how TOMO locks in a rate for the consumer. Now, on your end as a loan officer, how does the lock and shop process work in terms of looking at the interest rates, looking at the type of loan, and trying to set that up to where the consumer has the option to lock and shop?
So Lock and Shop is a great program for buyers that are looking for an added level of insurance. We do everything we can to keep our regular rates as competitive as possible, but for the buyer that wants a little more coverage, essentially they're able to lock their rate for up to 4 months with an upfront $450 fee, which gets refunded at closing if they close with us. Now, should the market improve dramatically between the time that they lock their rate and the time that they enter contract, we're then able to float them down as close as possible to market to make sure that they're still getting the best rate they can.
That's definitely very good to have. And definitely kind of looking at the overall marketplace for mortgages, how would that lock and shop work on your end? So are you locking in a specific type of loan at that point? And then if the market improves for interest rates, simply trying to find a better way to lock in that lower rate if that were to occur?
So we pre-approve the buyer for whatever we pre-approve the buyer for. Let's pretend this is a regular conventional purchase. So when they find their exact home or their exact situation that they want to proceed on, depending on how the market has changed. If the market went worse, they still have a great rate. They're protected. But if the market had improved at that time, we float them down closer to market. So they're still covered in either way.
That's definitely a very good option to have. Definitely a very nice tool, and it doesn't sound like there's really a lot of other programs that offer a tool like that so that consumers can confidently lock in a rate knowing that no matter what happens with the interest rates, they still know exactly what kind of payment they're getting into at what price point.
Absolutely.
Now, I definitely want to get your perspective on the appraisal gap coverage from TOMO. How, from your perspective, would you want to use that tool, and how does that work in terms of the underwriting process for the loan?
So we are the only lender, to the best of my knowledge, that has a product like this. And essentially, if a buyer is pre-approved with us and they're looking to buy a single-family home as a primary residence with at least a 10% down payment, our agent partners let us know of the offers they want to make in advance of making them. And we run this offer through our proprietary system. And if it answers us that it's comfortable with the value or the offer that's being made, the buyer gets what's called appraisal coverage. And what that means is, should the appraisal come short, the terms of the deal for the buyer do not change. They get the same original monthly payment, and they get the same cash to close that was originally thought of.
That is definitely very good to have. Now, I am curious. It's definitely great that TOMO has a program like that. So on your end, what was the big aha moment for TOMO that really kind of pieced together how the appraisal gap coverage could work?
I think what we saw in the market was there's a fear, especially with real estate agents like yourself, of dealing with a short appraisal, because the way everyone lends is on the lesser of the appraised value or the purchase price. And now I'm sure there's been one or two times in your career, it doesn't happen often, but you've dealt with a short appraisal. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, or even just the fears from the get-go when you get an offer that, you're starting to think about the different values of comparable homes and if it would appraise where the current offer price is at. You kind of start to look ahead as to how negotiations would play out in the case of something like that happening. So the fact that TOMO offers something like that creates a lot less headache for everyone involved.
Especially the agents. And again, our proprietary algorithm is comfortable with a certain degree of risk, and it's able to then provide that kind of certainty to both buyers, but possibly more importantly to the agents as well.
Absolutely. Now, I definitely want to give you the chance to discuss, is there any other type of, from the overall looking at TOMO from the mortgage perspective, is there anything else that really kind of drew you to TOMO as a mortgage officer as you've navigated such a deep history within the business, kind of how you see TOMO in the space of mortgages today and where TOMO is going as the market continues to evolve?
So that's a great question. I don't think I was ready for that. I think what drew me to TOMO essentially was being able to answer the question of how many buyers can I really help? And what would it look like to work with a talented team across all departments that are building the most amazing technology in the industry? How can we make home buying that much easier, that much simpler? How can we change the idea of a mortgage from being something that's difficult to something that's just easy and a simple part of the transaction? And again, I did it in New York, working with my father. And if you can make it there, can you make it anywhere, was the question that I wanted to answer. And I think I'm answering it.
Absolutely. Now, I definitely want to get into the nuts and bolts of how the process works with TOMO for getting pre-approved, starting with day one when you have your first phone call or meeting with the client, up until closing date when the client gets the keys in their hand. So from your perspective, can you kind of go over step by step how that process works with Tomo?
Sure. So day one, first step, the truth is Tomo's pre-approval that we're able to issue relatively quickly. And what I mean by relatively quickly, the fastest we've been able to do an underwritten pre-approval is 10 minutes.
Wow.
Underwritten
fast.
pre-approval. Our website and technology is amazing. Simply by filling out a form, connecting a couple of bank accounts, and entering Social Security, we're able to do all the work that most lenders do probably a week and a half after a buyer's in contract, up front for the pre-approval. We're able to issue the strongest pre-approval with the least headache for buyers, the fastest in the industry. So again, instantly I have hard credit, I have work verification, I have asset verification, we check against fraud, and we're able to actually run AUS or automated underwriting incredibly quickly. And all the information is verified by both, the technology and by the professionals that I work with. So from the very first minute, the buyers can shop with confidence and the agents can shop with that same confidence as well.
Wow. That's definitely a very cutting edge approach to it as well. Just having all the information up front so that a lot of that typical work that goes into the pre-approval process, it seems like it can be addressed and worked on pretty much immediately.
Absolutely. And between the strength of our pre-approvals and our innovative financial products like appraisal coverage, buyers can really stand out in competitive situations, especially against cash offers. So the goal here again is just to make this as simple and as easy. It's to spoil first-time home buyers so that they never know what a bad home buying experience could possibly be. And yeah.
That's a great approach to it. Absolutely. So then the pre-approval process is all lined up, and then the buyer makes an offer on a home and it goes under contract. How does the loan process move forward from there?
That same day, we usually disclose the loan. We order the appraisal. We coordinate with the title company. We get the buyer started shopping for homeowners insurance, and we usually submit to underwriting essentially within 24 hours. This allows us the opportunity to get an underwriter to review, check all the work that's already been essentially checked before, and issue conditional approval and clear conditions faster than anyone else can. Then we coordinate with the different parties throughout the rest of the transaction and close on time. Like 90% of our deals are closed on time because we do all of this stuff up front, and we're enabled with technology to do these things quickly.
Absolutely. And especially in a complex situation and process like going under contract with a home and getting all the financing lined up, being able to instantly coordinate with an appraiser, insurance, title company, and all the parties involved to make the process just as seamless as possible. It seems like a very big part of what Tomo tries to make a lot more efficient is communication across the board.
Agents that I've worked with, essentially everyone always says the same thing. The only thing that they're looking for, aside from like the table stakes of being able to close on time, is communication. Is somebody that will answer the phone at 6:30 on Super Bowl Sunday when they need a pre-approval, and we do that.
That's very good to have. So, as it gets closer to closing day or on closing day, what is the consumer left to do from the mortgage perspective with Tomo?
Prior to the closing day, the consumer is sent, our buyers are sent the closing disclosures. We review them with them. They know who to wire their final funds to, and they just sign and pick up keys. Because if we make that a good experience for every buyer that we work with, that becomes a good experience for everyone else that was a part of the transaction as well. And the goal is the more we do that, the bigger we can grow and the more people we can help.
I definitely think that is a great note to leave on. I definitely want to thank you for bringing your expertise and your perspective on such a complex part of the home buying process to the show. So thank you for coming on, Ted.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
You're very welcome. Thank you. It's my pleasure. And that wraps up this episode of the Reynolds Direction. Thank you for tuning in. And if you have any questions about the pre-approval or buying process, you can contact an agent on the team directly, or you can reach out to the wonderful people at TOMO Mortgage as well. Cheers, y'all.